In today's video, I'm continuing to look at the different Nakabayashi paper options. Today, I have the Logical Air, which is supposedly 20% lighter than some of their other paper options. Let's take a look. Okay, so as I mentioned in the intro, this is the Logical Air, and it shows here on their marketing that this is, 20% lighter. And in looking at their website, they had a translated PDF that talked about this was easier for students to carry around for school. So I think that's probably where this is kind of aimed at initially when it was created, with it being a Japanese stationery. But that being said, this has a lighter paper cover than the one that we saw in the Usari. And one little side note, this cover is not as durable as the others. Let me see if I can get the angle right here. You can see that just in the time of putting this into my kind of messenger bag coming from the pen shop back to the house, that rubbed up against something and left some indentations on the cover. So this might be a good A5 size to put into some sort of cover, like a Lockbee or I just blinked on the name. The Rickshaw. Rickshaw has an A5 cover, or Galen Leather, I believe, does as well. So that's just something. It's not going to affect the paper quality, but if that would annoy you seeing that mark on the cover, just something to be aware of. So I did the initial writing in here like I did in the other Usari paper options. So here's what we have. Let me bring this up closer here. So it's the same pins, and this paper performed really well. I didn't really see any spread. This would be what I would consider expected writing on a decent fountain pen friendly paper. This is the Diamine ink, Iroshizuku, the Mont Blanc ink, just the rollerball, and then the second Iroshizuku, where I did 0 seconds, 5 seconds, and 15 seconds for dry time. And you can even see on that on all of these, let me see if I can get that. Hopefully this is coming through well on the camera, that it started to dry so much that it almost, it didn't leave the same kind of swipe when pulling the finger across the paper. This does not seem to really be a coated paper, so that's probably part of that, why that's happening like that. But overall, this is a really nice kind of, lightweight paper, and even though it's not as thick as the Usari, this almost, I would say, would be equal, if not better, performance in many ways. The Usari, while it didn't have the kind of feathering I saw in the Logical Prime, it did have a slight little bit if you really get down into it and look really close, but, for regular usage, I don't think that would be any kind of issue. But this, I do believe, performed better than the Usari, so if I had to choose between the two, I think I would probably go with this one. It's, 80 sheets versus, I think, 120, but I would rather have a couple, and I didn't weigh, because I don't have two of these, but I would be willing to guess that you could almost have two of these versus the weight of the one Usari, since it is such a thick, heavy book. The other thing I liked about this paper is that the grid is not really dark. That's one thing with some gridded papers, is the grid is so dark that when you actually write on it, it kind of takes away from the writing, which is honestly the more important part. So I did like that this is a light, gray grid, and even on the grid, if you look really close, which I'm not going to be able to zoom in, it's actually just little dots. It's a dotted grid throughout. And the other part that's just a minor detail that I really like is on the top and bottom of the page, they don't let the grid bleed off the top or the bottom. There's an actual margin on the top and bottom, and that's just one of those little things that some gridded or dot gridded papers where that it kind of, or ghosts off the top of the page. That's just a little pet peeve of mine. If I'm making something where I want to count the exact number of boxes down for whatever I'm formatting and writing, that's one of those little pet peeves I didn't know I had until I came across papers that accounted for that and had the margins. But let me do I'll do one writing sample here, just again with the Iroshizuku, just to kind of show, and try and do some swipes and whatnot to show how quickly it dries. And this is, once again, the Opus 88 the same one here with the Iroshizuku Rika. But uh, and this I just blanked on the name. Logical Air. And you can, that's another thing, because this paper is not coated, if you like to hear the nib scratching across the paper per se, this is a lot better paper than the coated papers for it. Um, so, just wrote on that, giving it a couple of seconds here, and you can see how quickly that swipe was and how little that caught. So, that's one plus for this. And if it's aimed towards students, that would make sense. So that if you're in class and you're going between periods or something like that, you'd expect for your ink to dry quickly so you don't bleed onto the previous page. If you're using both sides of the paper, which it's been so long since I've been in school, and I don't know how specifically, Japanese students, if they use both sides of the paper. I can imagine, though, that they would, just for, making the best use of the notebook. But that's a nice little plus for this, that it does dry really quickly. If you're using this for a journal and you're somewhere and all of a sudden you need to go or pack up quickly, you're not going to have to worry about putting blotter paper in here, as long as you give it a good 10 seconds or so after you've written, and it shouldn't really go on to the other page here. So let me grab the other two Nakabayashi notebooks, and I'll just do a quick side-by-side and show how they all compare. So before I get to the side-by-side comparison of the Logical Air, the Logical Prime, and the Usari, I wanted to take a moment and ask if you're liking this type of video. Are you liking to see the side-by-side comparison of different papers from the same brand? Leave a comment below and let me know, if this is the type of video that you're enjoying, or if you have some ideas or, feedback that might be helpful in terms of making other videos. Now let's get to the side-by-side comparison. Okay, so here's the three Nakabayashi notebooks that I've done individual videos on. This is the ringed Logical Prime, the Logical Air that we're talking about today, and then the Nakabayashi Usari, which was the thicker, almost Clairefontaine potential replacement type paper. So if I had to rate these in terms of which one would I grab if there were no other factors involved, and which one I think I would enjoy the most, I think I would actually go with the Logical Air, just from the dry time and the fact that I could carry around two of these just about for the weight of one of these. When you're carrying around a lot of paper items, it gets heavy. If you're traveling or something like that, you always want to be conscious of how much weight you're carrying. So I think, having tested these three, Logical Air would be the one I would go with, and followed by Usari, and then the Logical Prime. And then just to show a thickness comparison, of course, papers are going to come in different number of pages, but you can see that, it's kind of in the middle. So this would be, the least favorite for me, because I use a lot of Iroshizuku inks, and then these two, if I had to choose either, I wouldn't be disappointed, but like I said, I think Logical Air would be the one that I would choose, all other factors being equal. And just to show the actual writing comparison, actually I think I did this one in the back where I had the individual inks. Now I'm going to have to try and hold this open because, well, I guess I can do it this way. The way luckily the ringed one had it in the back. So let's get this one set up here. Okay, so here we have, make sure I'm lined up well in the camera. Here we have the three different, papers, and same pens, same, everything. And now in terms of which one shows colors best, I do think still the Logical Prime shows the color the best. And judging that off the red in the writer's blood really shows off, and then the purple shows a lot better there. And I actually didn't use the Cyangyo on these two from a swatch standpoint, but in line thickness, the Usari, you can see that the Cyangyo line It's a little bit of a bigger line there, so it adds a fraction, to each line thickness. So that's something else as well, if you're using larger nibs, something to account for, especially if you're trying to keep your writing within a certain grid line or something like that. You would want to potentially size down what nib you're using. But even on the rollerball, that's where it's more surprising to show that 0.5 millimeter rollerball, how much, of a line difference that makes there. So overall, like I said, I think logical error would be my go-to of these three, but it's nice to have been able to, get all three of these essentially at the same time and kind of go through one by one and then do this kind of final wrap up summary video of the three. So that's the look at the Nakabayashi Logical Air. Okay, so that's going to wrap up this look at the Nakabayashi Logical Air. I really enjoyed testing this paper out. As I mentioned in the video, I think this would be my go-to of the different Nakabayashi journal options that I've tried recently. So that's always good to find another paper that you want to add into your regular rotation. Have you used any of these Nakabayashi papers? Be sure and leave a comment and let me know which ones you're using, which ones you like, or if you've run into issues and there's some that you tried but you weren't really a fan of, leave that in the comments as well. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing so you can see new videos as they're released, and thanks for watching.